When we're doing integer multiplication, there are a few simple rules to remember. A positive times a positive is a positive. This is what it's always been. 3 times 2 is positive 6. A negative times a negative is going to be a positive. So if you have positive 4 times positive 5, the answer is 20. Negative 4 times negative 5 is also positive 20. So when two signs are the same, the answer will be positive. So let's look at an example, negative 8 times negative 7. First, we're going to multiply the signs. A negative times a negative is a positive. 8 times 7 is 56. So negative 8 times negative 7 is positive 56. Positive numbers, this is just like what you've been doing since 3rd grade. 9 times 3, multiply the signs and you get a positive. 9 times 3, 27. If we do division, the rules stay the same. In other words, a positive divided by a positive is a positive, and a negative divided by a negative is a positive. Multiplication and division are related facts, so their rules are very similar. If we have positive 15 divided by positive 3, we get positive 5. Negative 15 divided by negative 3 is also a positive 5, because a negative divided by a negative will be a positive. So when two signs are the same, the answer is positive. This is the same as with multiplication. So let's look at examples. Negative 8 divided by negative 2. Divide the signs. A negative divided by a negative is a positive, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. So the answer is positive 4. Positive 72 divided by positive 8 is positive 9. Let's look at multiplication then. We said a positive times a negative is a negative. A negative times a positive is a negative. So these examples, 4 times negative 5, negative 20, and negative 4 times positive 5 is also negative 20. When the signs are different, you see the answer is negative. So if you have two signs that are different, the answer will be negative. So positive times a negative is a negative, and 5 times 9 is 45. So 5 times negative 9 is negative 45. Negative 7 times positive 6, start with a negative times a positive, you get a negative. 7 times 6, 42. Negative 42. A negative times a positive is a negative. So with integer division, when the signs are different, a positive divided by a negative, that's going to have a negative answer. Or a negative divided by a positive is also a negative answer. Our examples, positive 15 divided by negative 3 is negative 5. Negative 15 divided by positive 3 is negative 5. When two signs are different, the answer is negative. Positive divided by negative is a negative, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. So positive 8 divided by negative 2 is negative 4. Negative 72 divided by positive 8. Divide the signs, and we get a negative. Divide the numbers, and the answer is 9. Negative 9. So a quick review, integer multiplication. When two signs are the same, the answer is positive. Positive times positive is positive. Negative times negative is positive. When the signs are different, the answer is negative. A positive times a negative is negative. Negative times a positive is negative. If you have division of two numbers, the rule is the same. When the signs are the same, the answer is still positive. Positive divided by positive is positive. Negative divided by negative is positive. However, if the signs are different, the answer is negative. Positive divided by negative is negative, and negative divided by positive is also negative. So just remember that when you have two numbers and the signs are the same, the answer will be positive. If you have two numbers and one of those numbers is negative, the answer will be negative. So if we have three numbers now, let's see what we need to do. We're going to start by multiplying the signs. Let's look at the first two signs, a negative times a negative. That's a positive. Then we have a positive times a positive, so our answer is positive. When we have three or more numbers, we have to look at the signs and combine the signs together using multiplication. Next, we're going to multiply the numbers. 3 times 3 is 9, and 9 times 4 is 36. In this case, we have 4 negative signs, so we start by multiplying the signs. The first two, a negative times a negative, is a positive, and a negative times a negative is a positive. Notice that whenever we have 2 negative signs, we can change that into 1 positive. So an even number of negatives makes positive answers. So now we multiply the numbers. 2 times 3 is 6. 5 times 4 is 20. 6 times 20 is 120. Positive 120. When there are an even number of negative signs, the answer is positive. Even negatives, positive answer. Let's look at an odd number of negatives. In this case, when we multiply the negative times the positive, we get a negative. And then again, a negative times a positive is a negative. When the signs are different, the answer is negative. Now we multiply the numbers. 2 times 3 is 6, and 6 times 7 is 42. So the answer is negative 42. Notice there's an odd number of negatives. There's only one negative sign in that question. Here's negative times a negative is positive, and a positive times a negative is a negative. Now we multiply the positive times the negative, and we get a negative. Next, we'll multiply the numbers. 5 times 4 is 20, and 2 times 7 is 14. If we multiply 20 times 14, we get 280. So the answer is negative 280. Notice there are 3 negative signs. When there are an odd number of negative signs, the answer is negative. So we count the negative signs. If there are an even number, then the answer will be positive. If there are an odd number of negatives, the answer is negative. Let's count the signs. There's 5 negatives. Next, we know our answer is going to be negative. There are an odd number of negative signs, so the answer is negative. In this example, if we count the negatives, we see there are 4 negatives. Because 2 will combine to make positives, then when there is an even number of negatives, the answer is positive. Looking at exponents now, negative 3 squared does not equal negative 3 squared because in the first example, you see on the left, the negative 3 is in the parentheses. Because the negative 3 is inside parentheses, it means we're going to square the negative 3. So we multiply negative 3 times negative 3. A negative times a negative is a positive, and 3 times 3 is 9. The second number, negative 3 squared, the negative sign is not in the parentheses. Notice it's not going to be squared. So the negative sign will go outside, and the 3 will be multiplied together 2 times. So a negative times 3 times 3. That gives us an answer of negative 9. So notice that if the sign is inside the parentheses, we square the sign. We multiply the sign. If the sign is not inside parentheses, then it does not get multiplied again. Let's look at an example with a cubed number. In this case, we're going to multiply negative 2 3 times. So we have a negative times a negative is a positive, and a positive times a negative is a negative. And 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 2 is 8. If we simplify this expression, it says negative 7a times 4b. If we have 4 numbers being multiplied together, we can rearrange the numbers to combine like terms. In other words, the commutative property of multiplication says that we can rearrange the terms in a multiplication problem and it will still have the same value. So we're going to take the 2 numbers and multiply them next to each other. Negative 7 times 4. And then the variables go on the end in alphabetical order. Negative 7 times 4 times a times b. So a negative times a positive is a negative. And we get negative 28ab. Here's another one. Negative 5x times negative 8y. Multiply the negative 5 times the negative 8, and we get 40xy. Move the numbers, the integers, together to multiply, and then put the variables on in alphabetical order. Notice that when variables are next to numbers, it means we are multiplying them. So in this example, 3xy, this means 3 times x times y. So we're going to substitute and solve. 3xy equals 3 times 2 times negative 6. 3 times 2 is 6, and 6 times negative 6 is negative 36. Evaluate negative xy. In this case, it's like saying a negative times x times y. Substitute the values, and we have a negative x times y, which is equal to a negative times negative 5 for x and times negative 11 for y. So we see 3 negatives. It's an odd number of negatives, so our answer is negative. Multiply 5 times 11, and we get 55. Here's another last example. If we evaluate negative f over d. If f is 36, we substitute and get negative 36 divided by negative 9. Negative divided by negative is a positive, and 36 divided by 9 is 4. F divided by 2g, we put the f on top, substitute, and then put the 2 times g times negative 6 on the bottom. 36 divided by negative 12 equals negative 3. In this type of problem, we're finding the mean or the average of the numbers in the data set. This board problem says Sydney has a score of negative 4, negative 2, positive 3, and negative 1 after 4 rounds of golf. We're going to find her average golf score. To find the average, we add together the numbers in the data set and divide by the number of data pieces that are in our set. So in this case, she had 4 rounds of golf, so we divide by 4. When we add the integers at the top, we get negative 7 plus 3, or negative 4. Divide that by 4, and the mean, or the average, of her 4 rounds of golf equals negative 1. In this word problem, it says the wind chill temperatures in degrees Fahrenheit for 7 days are shown below. Find the mean, or the average, and interpret the quotient. Interpret the quotient means divide. So we start by adding together the numbers in our data set. Negative 8 plus 2 plus negative 3 plus negative 7 plus 4 plus negative 5 plus 3. If we add together the negative numbers, we get negative 23 plus the positive numbers plus 9. Negative 23 plus 9 is negative 14. Then we interpret the quotient with division. Negative 14 divided by 7 equals negative 2. A negative divided by a positive is a negative. I hope this is helpful. This is on solving multiplication and division with integers.